of Light Foundation, a voice for children and teenagers podcast. We are giving a platform to our younger voices, children and teenagers, sharing their thoughts on our mindfulness in nature programs and books, plus the educational system. Asking them what type of school would they want to learn in? What would they like to see change in our world? Finding out what gifts they hold and why they feel they are here on this planet. We believe, as parents and educators, that we should strive to raise children with a voice and for them to be heard.
Welcome to Angels of Light Children Foundation. This is a voice for the children. I'm Charles Chudabala.
And I'm Terry Allen. And today we have Joseph with us. So thank you for coming on our show, Joseph. And I just want to tell people that I met you a few years back. During the pandemic, we were at the Inn of the Seven Rays in Topanga, and we just got talking, myself, your mom, you, and my son and my husband. And so we exchanged numbers. So I wanted people just to have a connection with us. And then I just kept in touch with your mother. And then, you just came into our meditation to reach out to Joseph a few years later and see if he'd like to come on. So thank you so much for coming on here and sharing a voice for children, because it's so important. Well, it's always been important, but I think more than ever. So thank you, Joseph.
Of course. It's a pleasure to be on. Thank you.
Would you like to just tell us a little bit about yourself so people can know who's Joseph, just before we start going off with all the questions?
Sure. So I'm Joseph. I'm 16. I play a lot of sports. My mom's from Chile. My dad's from here. I speak 3 languages. I play piano. I love cars. And I like philosophical discussions. I do that with my friends pastime sometimes.
And what are your 3 languages that you speak?
Mandarin, Spanish, and English.
Wow. Well done, you, darling. Yeah, that's what I'm trying. My son's got a Spanish teacher at the moment. He asked for it. So I think he'll probably go into Mandarin. He said he was interested next as well. So I think it's great to learn a language. But anyway, we're going to get on with the questions, Joseph. So I just wanted to ask you, I've never asked this question before, but I felt the need to ask this question. You know, when I asked you to come on A Voice for Children, what made you feel that you felt aligned with coming on here to speak and share your thoughts and views about everything at this moment in time?
Well, I think to give children a voice is one of the most important things we can do in today's society. That does not happen very often. And I was ecstatic to hear that, there's a new podcast, relatively new podcast that was giving children a voice into the world. And I think, that alone was enough to make me come on. And of course, to see you again, it was wonderful.
And do you feel there's just nothing out there? That's why were you quite surprised?
Yeah, I don't see it very often where children are being interviewed. I think it should be important because a lot of children, before you become adults with all the stress and the responsibilities of life, they have a lot of great creative ideas that should be expressed out into the world. And I think that just needs to be shown more often. And I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. It's funny, when I was really looking around as well, there wasn't a lot out there. So you were right. So I always meditate to get my messages on, because we had the Magic and Miracles podcast for the last few years, and there's some great stories on there, and it's amazing what the stories that people have shared. But it just dropped in, why don't you give a voice for children behind our children's foundation? And I just thought, oh yeah, it just came in organically. And so it's really important. I agree with you to give the young youth of today a voice. So just going to get into it. So I had a little chat with you the other day about your background and stuff. And you told me you went to the Waldorf school for between the age of 2 to 6.
Mm-hmm.
And then you left after that. Just tell us a little bit about your experience. I know 2, you probably can't remember that much, but up until the age of 6, what was your personal experience?
Right. So to provide some context, where my mom is from, Chile, it's a very family-oriented country. Families stay together for way past when the children become adults, into their 30s, and sometimes they even live together until their 30s. So I got a little bit of that because I'm really attached to my parents. So when I was little and I got sent off to nursery or, what have you, I would get really sad and not like in a normal, I want my mommy kind of way. I felt emotionally disconnected from all of the schooling. And even though it wasn't like actually academic because I was very young, I just didn't want to be away from my parents. And at a young age, I think it's important to spend time with your parents because that's, those are the crucial years then until maybe my age. And even then on, you want to learn from your parents. You want to spend time with them. You want to be molded in their shape if that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I felt like I wasn't with my parents and I felt lonely. And so until I was in kindergarten,
Right.
I was having a good time, but I
Right.
was losing the ability to speak Spanish because I wasn't spending time with my mom. And that was bad because Spanish was my first language and I use it to communicate
Oh, okay.
with my family over in Chile. And also my teacher was great. She was wonderful. But then what started happening is she would not notice some children doing very bad things.
At that young age?
Yeah,
I'm quite surprised.
there's this one kid who did some horrible things to this other one of my best friends at the time, and she would turn a blind eye to it, which is concerning. And after seeing all that and dealing with it I was in kindergarten for 2 years because that's how the Waldorf curriculum works. I didn't want to deal with that anymore, and my mom gave me the option. Thankfully,
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the best things she could have done. She gave me the option to become homeschooled, and I took it, and I have no regrets.
That's what I say. A point of good parenting is really listening to your children. I know some say, oh, I don't want to go to school. It's a difference when a child really isn't happy to a child that, oh, I don't want to go to school. So there is a difference. There is a difference when they're speaking in their words and what they're saying, when you know they're generally not happy. And it's so nice that you have a parent or your parents that allowed you to have that feeling and to share it and to acknowledge it and then honor how you were feeling. Not many do. I think there's more now coming. But also it's a big topic because it's difficult for some parents that are both working. So yeah.
It sounds like also just to add that you mentioned the strong bond that you have with your mother, with your family, culturally, the connection. It may sound a little, I don't know, codependent or whatnot, but in the positive and spiritual connected way, it's I hurt, you hurt.
But also, I think because of the background of Chile, the Spanish, the Italians, probably even the Mexican background, all these, they're very family orientated, just like in India, in the Middle East, it's very family orientated. And so you probably find the Western worlds are probably a little less, maybe, would you say?
Individualistic.
Maybe, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I completely support, leaving the nest early, as they would say. I think that'd be great, and that works perfectly for some people.
Correct.
And I'm going to go to college. I decided to pursue that.
And so did you do all your teachings for people that are interested in homeschooling? Did you do all your learning online or did you go to certain people?
So from first grade,
Yeah.
so from kindergarten, and then immediately in first grade, I went into homeschool. From first grade to third grade, my mom taught me by herself because the workload was fairly easy.
Yes, it is.
Just the basics. And then third to about fifth,
yeah,
I had a tutor I went to in Los Angeles with one other kid. And from fifth to the end of eighth, and I started ninth with an online private school, but fifth to eighth, I did an online Zoom class with one teacher, but she covered all the topics with about other kids.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously that worked well for you because you're obviously doing really well. But how did you meet other children? Did you do sports to meet others? That's going to be the parents' number one question, because a lot of parents would like to homeschool, but then they think my child needs to have other children, mix with the children. I get that. I understand that because I homeschooled my son for the last 3 years. Now he's going, well, the last 2 years, he's now going to go back in to a small little school. But would you like to share that with our viewers?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a very valid question. I'd say everybody's experience is unique, but mine, I would say, is very different from the norm, because when I was younger, my dad is in the finance industry, and he had me talk to a lot of adults who are, very knowledgeable and well-versed in their crafts. So I'm used to talking to adults. So I'd say I'm a little more comfortable socially than the average person.
Right.
So I would make friends a little bit easier than, let's say, a normal, kid my age. I actually prefer back then I preferred talking to adults than children. I found their conversations were more mentally stimulating for me.
For you. Yeah. I found that. Actually, I found that growing up myself. I was with older people.
Right.
Yeah.
And the way I met kids was through soccer. I played soccer competitively since I was 4 years old. I joined like a little league, little kids, AYSO, American Youth Soccer.
Oh, yes. My son's in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've done that until 2020, and then 2020 to now, which I'm still playing. I played
in the AYS, what's it called? Different one?
So in 2020, I started club soccer, which is a little bit more competitive and
right.
It's like very rigorous. But yeah, I met a lot of kids through that. We joined a homeschooling group near my house. I met a lot of kids through that.
Oh,
about 90 kids in that.
Wow.
What?
Yeah. There's a lot of kids there. So I met a ton of people. And they try and recreate the whole high school experience. They have, proms with, their own.
Oh, that's so nice.
And we would go to stadiums and tour stadiums and museums and all that stuff. So it's a lot of activities. So I wasn't having, a big problem. So if you have a kid who's, interested in homeschooling and there's a co-op in your area or a homeschooling group, I would definitely pursue that if you're,
How did you find the group, for those who are listening? What do they look for?
We just asked around. I mean, I forget how my mom found it, but I think it's through a mutual friend.
So it's just, do they call it a cooperative group?
It's like a homeschooling group, essentially.
Homeschooling group. Okay. That's great to tell people, that it's available out there, because I think that's the one thing that they always think, oh God, my child needs to meet other children. And so that's great that you had a big community there. Wow. That I'm quite surprised there.
Yeah.
I got another question for you. So, what would you say are the biggest misconceptions about homeschooling?
Okay. So again, I completely acknowledge that my situation is pretty unique, but first off, you're isolated. Not true for me. You're not isolated. You're interacting constantly with either online teachers or online classmates, or you have more free time to go out and interact with friends.
Right.
So isolated, that you won't have social awareness because you're not used to social norms and all that. But that's not true, because if you're alive, you're going to be in social situations inevitably. And I'd say there's a lot of tough ones that don't apply, but they're misconceptions. I have to give it some more thought, but I mean, those are the two most prominent ones.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. Would you like to ask a question, or would you like me to?
Actually, I just wanted to add on to that. You said that being isolated is one of the biggest misconceptions, and then you follow that up with saying, well, actually no, I'm living in the world, so therefore I'm going to be interacting with people. I think that also goes hand in hand to the types of, again, family that you come from, the parents that are open to you exploring the world and your own, and finding yourself, coming into who you are.
Yeah, communication.
Because I think it could go the other way. I think the
Yeah.
reason people do ask about isolation is because they have examples of that. They know somebody who has been homeschooled and has literally been isolated from the world.
Correct.
Of fear of, and again, we're talking about, your situation. We know, we also have to just preface this that your situation is not everybody's situation. There are people that live in different territories, different regions, where there might not even be a homeschool community network of 90 kids where you come from, or even have access to some of the places, because I think you live in LA County too, correct?
Just a little bit outside of it, but yeah.
Outside of Los Angeles. And so that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, I think it's both. It's creating the environment, right? And if your homeschooling is your environment, that is nurtured, that's fortified by your family system. And then it's also you wanting it, also you as an individual.
Yeah.
Saying, this is important to me. It's a value to me to learn in this environment, to have philosophical conversations. That's a value to you. But I also want to get out in the world. I want to be on a soccer team. I want to meet other people. I want to have the prom experience and go to college and still maintain that bond. I think the things that you're bringing up are kind of poking a hole in what people think the homeschool situation has to be like.
Right. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that was well said, Charles. I think you're spot on there. Another thing we're asking, do you have any mindful practices? Do you do mindfulness in any way? And mindfulness, obviously, because we're a foundation that teaches children mindfulness around the world. Just asking you that, what mindfulness practices do you bring into your daily life?
Right. So I try to meditate a little bit. I don't meditate religiously like, a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Well, not religiously in a religion form, but
yeah,
repeatedly.
Yeah.
Say I do it when I need it.
Yeah.
Which thankfully is not too often, but whenever I'm feeling stressed or anxious, I'll meditate. Or
did somebody teach you that, Josie? Who brought it into your life?
Yeah. So when I was about, I want to say 8 years old, I went with my mom to a meditation kind of, I want to say class, but it wasn't really a class.
Right.
In LA, and they kind of taught us how to meditate and relax everything and just keep your mind concentrated on your meditation. It was nice, and I still apply it occasionally. It's very relaxing, but if I don't want to meditate at the moment, I'll just walk out into my yard and just touch grass, essentially.
Yeah, there's many different ways to mindfulness, and you're right, people think it's sitting there meditating. A lot of people can't do that. And you're right, nature is a place where mindfulness can be your biggest meditation. Like you just said, touching the grass, feeling the ground, looking at the sky, looking at the birds, looking at everything around you brings you into this present moment. Because you said a really interesting comment to me the other day, and I actually wrote it down when you said, I disconnect. I know how to disconnect from the noise of the outside world. Would you like to share with our viewers and younger viewers that are listening, when do you know that there's too much noise? That's the first question. So, when there's too much noise and you intuitively know you need to disconnect.
Well, personally, I'd say if there's too much noise, and there was too much noise, in my opinion, from 2020 to mid-2022, unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'd say the way I disconnect from it and the way I know how high it is or how I range it, I'd say if something on the news is affecting me personally or affecting me in stress levels, that is how I know when I should just disconnect and tone everything out of my life. And
so do you feel anxious or unsettled, or what is the feeling for people that don't know, and for children or teenagers that are listening? What is the feeling to you? Because this is what we teach through mindfulness is, it's the feeling in your body, in your emotional, physical, everything, and we govern everything from our mind, correct? So, everything stimulates our mind on the planet. We're always mind. And we then ignore the emotion and the feeling of this isn't quite right for us. And then we start running on that road and it's the wrong one. We haven't really self-navigated that something's not quite right. We try and brush it under because obviously the logic kicks in. So when could you just tell our viewers in your own words, because I know what mine is, but I don't, I'd like to hear your words. Where do you feel it? What are the actual emotions? And just so you could identify it within, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So during COVID, I'd say that was one of the most stressful times in the beginning.
Yeah.
I'd say probably it peaked in August 2020 for me.
Right.
I was, in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles was fully locked down. We couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah, correct.
And at the time, we were living in a very small house, which felt very confined. And you feel like you're constricted. You feel like your soul is just caged. And
Right.
in the I want to go crazy way, but it feels like it's just being constrained.
Correct.
And you don't feel free. And then you feel stressed that said soul is not being free. And I just don't want to feel that anymore. And I think toning everything out, connecting with nature, all that can help substantially.
Yeah. So that's your go-to is Mother Nature. It's my go-to. That's why I created mindfulness through nature, because it's the main, there's nothing like it.
Right.
What a profound way to put it, Joseph. Your soul feels constrained.
Yeah. Well, we all did, didn't we? Because we all felt it was wrong. There was something wrong, and your soul knew it, but it's having the ability to know that and not step into the fear of what's being spread around, to have that feeling, oh, something's not quite right here. So, you went with that emotion because of his training, of his meditations, and how he's been brought up, and the type family values. And so he had that built-in understanding. Some people just, I had a lot of children and teenagers come to me and they were online and they couldn't work that out, and it tipped them right over the edge. So because of the tools that you were given earlier on, you picked it up. That's why I always say the earlier you teach children, earlier mindfulness, they can pick it up and use the tools that were given to them to self-navigate through stressful situations. And hopefully nothing like that ever comes again, but one never knows. So it's good to, but also stuff in their life. So mindfulness is a skill, and meditation, which is mindfulness taken from meditation, but just taken on a different scale. So it's not related to religion. But for them to identify and self-navigate like you did, because you had tools. Another thing, how do you stay grounded and connected?
How do I stay grounded and connected? Oh, that's a tough one.
Because we can all float off.
Yeah.
And young children are vata, so they're air. They float off. Parents. That's why mindfulness is another thing. The mindfulness is good to teach children in yoga and breath work and stuff, because children are naturally air. The top of the tree. We've got to get them down. But you're much older now. So how do you ground yourself and stay connected when you've floated off?
For me, it's pretty simple. I just try and stay as present as possible.
What do you use? What tools do you use? Because people might say, well, who are listening, what does he mean?
Well, for me, it's kind of interesting. Staying present, I mean, paying attention to what you're doing in the moment.
Right.
I'd say what I do to help is I imagine looking at myself in the third person, and I'm like,
great. That's mindfulness. He's got it down. Your mom did a good job.
Wow.
No, it's right, because I was talking to somebody yesterday, giving them an interview, and he said, explain to me mindfulness. I said, you're the actor, you're the producer, and you're the writer of your play. You are the third person as well. So that's mindfulness. And I had to break it all down, because a lot of people just presume it's sitting there looking at an apple or a tree. And yeah, that is a part of it, but it's not the whole thing. So it's great that you try and have that outside awareness, and you know, that you have become ungrounded. And it's okay to become ungrounded. We're not saying it doesn't happen, because it happens to me, it happens to you, it happens to Charles, it happens to all of us. But you have to know when you've gone off, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's the key. So, and so what do you do? Breath work? Do you do meditation? Do you go for walks? How do you stabilize yourself?
How do I stabilize myself? Well, as I mentioned before, I'm kind of a social person. So I like spending time with my friends and family. I think it's, it's relaxing to me. I'd say it's draining for a lot of people, and I totally get that. And especially, if you do that a lot, it's draining. So I'll see a few friends a week, and then I'll just relax at home. But it's really important to stay present for me, because it feels wrong not to be present. I have something like, for instance, if I'm on my phone, trying to set something up, there's something inside me that's telling me you're not being present. Don't do this. So I try to stay away from that kind of stuff.
It's funny. That was our next question, actually. And Charles added this question in, which is great. First question, though, before I go on to that one. What age were you given a phone?
Like 11 and a half.
Yeah, well, I gave my son his phone at 12 and a half at Christmas.
Nice.
And I was really hesitating to give that phone.
Right.
Really wanted to wait till he was 15 and 16.
Right.
And it's a big question on parents' minds about the phone. So what are your thoughts on social media? That was Charles's question, actually.
Well, that's a very deep question. I'd say
my son doesn't have social media. I'm just putting it out there. He's too young. No, he asked me for it, and I said, for what? If you want to show your drawings or you want to show your creativity, but I'm running it. And he went, oh no, it's okay. And I thought, okay,
Yeah.
have you one.
Joseph, let me just say, yes, it is a broad question. So I just want to say there's no wrong answer.
Yes.
There's
one size doesn't fit all. Exactly.
No right answer.
Yeah.
And in this present moment, what comes up for you when you think about social media?
Well, I'd say it's more of a 65-35 split.
Which bit's the split?
The 65% is a negative influence, in my opinion.
Ooh, okay.
I'd say it's not a good thing for the 65%. But for the 35%, like this will be on YouTube, I'm assuming. And that's typically considered a social media.
Yes.
I think that could be used for the good. And there's definitely use for the good. And staying in contact with people, that's also important.
Yes.
A lot of people become addicted to it. So that's a huge part. I know a lot of people that are addicted to social media, and it's really, really, so that's just my opinion. I would be fine if it didn't exist.
Do you have a social media account?
I do, but I don't really use it.
Is that TikTok, Instagram, whatever else is out there?
Just Instagram and YouTube.
Instagram and YouTube. So you're not a TikTok person?
No, I never downloaded TikTok because I don't want to get addicted to it.
Yeah, my son had that at one point, and we're not knocking TikTok. There's some great meditations on there. We post our stuff on there, but I agree. I had to take it off him. It was like a rabbit hole. It was just flicking from one thing to the other. And I could see his mood had changed. It was on his iPad, actually. And I was silly to give it him during the pandemic, but I didn't know what it was. So I just thought, oh yeah. And then when I saw his mood change, that's another thing for parents and your peers or caretakers, whoever's looking after their children, for whether you're in a foster care and adoption, anywhere, is to watch the child's emotions if they're changing with the apparatus that you're giving them. And if that's the case, then you have to pull it back. It's a big awareness of that. If you're older, then like you said, if you can self-navigate, but then again, some don't. I mean, I didn't grow up with social media. I'm like your mother. I didn't grow up with social media, so I can leave it all. So I have to use it. I don't have to, let's rephrase that. I use it for my work, but yeah, I like YouTube, but I do have Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, but like you, I can drop it off. And I think you're the same, right, Charles? You're not constantly on it either.
Well, I mean, to use your words, Joseph, I do feel it in my soul, when I need a break.
Yes.
It's something that I don't know, like how to I don't know if there's a seminar or a way to teach people this at all, but it's a feeling. It's like I just know that my brain, my body, my spirit just knows that it needs to be away for a week.
Correct.
Is that a week? Is that a couple days? I don't know. It just knows.
Correct.
I don't know.
But when a child is taught certain tools when they're young, but also the parent has to look at that and know when to implement and put something else on there. But teaching a child to self-navigate, or I wouldn't give a phone to a child unless they're just calling people, a young child. I mean, I didn't like giving it at the age of 13, so I think a little Nokia to call their parents is great.
Right. For me, I use my phone primarily for contact.
Yeah, that's what my son asked me for.
Right. I use mine probably 80% for that.
Right.
That's about it. And that's just for my friends.
And you're right. There is a lot of positive things out there on YouTube. There is a lot of positive things on all these platforms. But again, it's self-navigation, what you log on to and what you watch and what you don't. But it can be quite addictive. So it's good that you shared that. If you could create your own school for children, what would it be and what would it look like?
Well, that's a tough question. I've never really been to traditional school, like school. Kindergarten doesn't really count in my opinion because I wasn't really learning anything. If I had to add a couple things, I probably couldn't describe a whole school because I'd need to spend more time thinking about that. But I'd say probably more student oriented. I'd say that's one of my main grievances with schools is that they're too robotized.
Yeah.
They're very robotized. They're very impersonal, like especially public schools. I mean,
Correct.
Schools are not the greatest at the moment. So they just give you a packet. They expect you to learn. It's very impersonal. There's no hands-on learning. It doesn't motivate you to learn. So I'd try to change that in somehow.
No, that's quite the same message across the board from everyone that we're speaking to, actually. It's robotic, and we're just sharing this because hopefully people are listening to change the system, to change for the next generation coming up, for the children, and to make it more fun and more creative and more nature driven, and like you said, smaller classrooms is the way to go, because then it's less robotic. And so you would go that route. I agree with you. I think that's the way to go. We had another question here, because obviously sustainability is really big at the moment on the planet and Mother Nature, and how we're abusing it on many levels, not just with children, but animals and nature. What are your thoughts around that? Would you like to share?
Around sustainability, I'd say it's tough, and I'd say there's a lot of bad stuff going on. My main concerns are bees. Bees are very, overlooked with avocados and almonds. They're really damaging the bees.
Avocados and almonds. What did you say?
Well, actually, I hate to cite this, but
No, say it.
I saw something that my friend showed me by Piers Morgan, and he was debating this vegan protester, and he said, I hate to cite it because it's very strange, but he said that avocados and almonds and all of that stuff they're very detrimental to bees, and bees have a soft spot in my heart because I've always loved them, and they're dying in huge numbers.
He's right.
Yeah.
Do you know who put that out this week? Sorry to cut you in. Robert Kennedy. I have his newsletters, and he's got the Children's Health Defence. And on the newsletter, because myself and my husband was up at Calabasas Commons, and there was all these dead bees all over the floor, like handfuls. And I thought, and my son said, maybe it's too hot. No, something's not right. And then funny enough, this week, a newsletter came from Robert Kennedy's team, and the pesticides that are being sprayed onto the greenery are killing the bees.
Yeah. I mean, pesticides
They're
are,
dropping in their millions. So up at the Commons, if anyone's listening, you need to change your spray system because the bees were all over the floor. I know there's a big thing about avocados that they say they are also damaging the planet as much as we have too many cows. I have heard that before, but I don't want to get into that because I'm not really an agricultural person. I'd have to go a little bit deeper. But yeah, I know that's been mentioned many times before. But yeah, he's right. It's the bees and people aren't noticing. It's funny that a newsletter came out this week from a Children's Health Defence, if anyone wants to sign up to Robert Kennedy's newsletter, and it talks about the environment, children, education, everything. It's a very informative newsletter. Is there anything else you wanted to add on to that apart from the bees, or was that your main?
I'd say the bees, and I know this may be cut, but this electric car movement, I'm very into cars. I'm very, very into cars, and I've done a ton of research on this.
Oh.
So you can run a classic car for 38 years before you offset the waste and environmental damage of one electric car. Take a Tesla Model 3. You can run a Porsche 911 for 38 years before you offset a brand new Model 3, before you even start running it off of electricity.
And why is that? Can you explain? Because and I have one electric car. So yeah, please, Joseph, I won't take it personal. I didn't know. We did it to save petrol, which a lot of people are doing, you know what I mean? So let's educate some people here.
Sure. So before I say this, I acknowledge, electric cars are booming now. I have friends who have Teslas and what have you.
It's because of the price of gas. That's why we did it.
Yeah. And that's probably the most, across the board, as a term you coined earlier. That's probably the most general across the board reason why people get them. But I'd say environmentally, personally, my opinion, they're not better than gas cars. They're not damaging. The lithium mines, I went to the south of Chile, or actually, sorry, the north of Chile, in the lithium mines, cobalt and copper, and a huge amount of waste is put into the atmosphere, mining for these minerals. And I went to one of these mines, and there was a hole 1 kilometer deep in the ground. It was enormous. And it was enormous trucks carrying all these minerals and hazardous waste and all of the above. And I'd say it's pretty scary because there's a lot of people that were displaced because there was a leak, and it's pretty concerning, and it's pretty damaging to the environment around there too. And then they're all assembled, they're taken across the world, all these minerals, and then put into a battery that lasts 7 or 8 years, depending on the car. Sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little shorter, depends on how you drive. There's a lot of, but it's a lot of waste. And then the batteries aren't disposable. They're put into some, hazardous waste dump. And, engines are made to run forever, or not forever, but for a very long time. They're made to run for decades and hundreds of thousands of miles.
So obviously that's your message to Elon Musk, right?
It is. I
what message, if you had a message for him, what would you say to him? Because he's quite an advocate, at the moment with his voice and allowing free platform on Twitter, etc. But he's the one that, it is a genius what he's created. But what would your message be for him?
My message for Elon Musk: I respect the guy. He's got a great work ethic. He works unbelievably hard, and I really have nothing but respect for that. Although I'd say maybe he needs to put a little more R&D and time and effort into sustainability and reusing batteries. And I'm personally not the biggest fan of electric cars. I respect it. I know I've been in them. I
think people aren't aware, darling. I don't think, I heard about this recently, and we bought our car way back because my husband was driving so much and spending so much on petrol. And he just said, I've got to get an electric car. That was the only thing. We just didn't think about. Only I know recently that this information has come out about the mining and what's going on. And then I felt a bit bad. And I didn't delve as much as deeply into it as you. That's why I don't talk about it too much, because I'm not that knowledgeable on it. But I know people are now talking about it, and they are pushing it everywhere around the world. It won't take off, I feel, because you got Dubai's many petrol cars, you got India, you got Asia, the tuk-tuk things. They're not gonna, and South Africa, forget it. They, God bless them, they hardly have any electricity a day. So won't be using any cars. But yeah, I think it was a good message that you shared there about the because a lot of people don't know. Did you know, Charles?
I know more now because Joseph has done his research. And let me say this, I think that the answer, it's not simple, but if I were to say the answer to most problems, most issues that are facing the world, start with exactly this. Someone who can speak with discourse like Joseph, to have conversations like Joseph, who has research to back it up, but comes across in a mindful, purposeful, intentional way.
Yeah, correct.
Because the media tries to put these extreme, like just to have like a fight on television and nothing gets resolved.
Yeah, nothing gets resolved, correct.
Promised version of what, discourse is supposed to be. And because I received that. I received all of that, and I now know more than I did before.
Correct.
And I'm grateful.
Yeah, no, I knew a bit of it, and he's just confirmed the bit that I had read was true, because I wasn't too sure and I hadn't got the time to delve deep. So that's great information that you shared with anyone. And just going in on our last questions. What changes would you like to see on the planet going forward? Because to me, we're going into a new world, and it's very pivotal which way we're taking this. After during the pandemic, I feel it was like a pause period. Now it's awakenment. Like which way do we want to take Mother Earth now? Because she's beautiful.
I'd say this is a pivot period. That my dad coined that term. It's a time where you could either go one way or the other. Chile had this about a year ago with their political system.
I feel this. I feel the same as you. That's why I wanted to ask, what were your feeling?
I'd say, in what aspect? Like political or social or
just everything really as a planet. We're all one. It's connected with Mother Nature and everything. I've got children. You're young. My son's young. Charles, you have children. Going forward, what do we? What vision would you have? If I was to say to you, Joseph, close your eyes, what vision would you have for this planet going forward?
I'd say an emphasis on removing bias can be one of the most important things you can have. Removing bias in education, in politics. I think that would get rid of a lot of corruption if you remove bias. I think that could be one of the most important things. And it sounds simple, but it's so not simple.
Yeah. So that would be your
removing bias. And I'd say you can't, I'm not going to give you an answer like, world peace or no.
I know. I agree. Yeah, I agree with that.
That's just too simple, and it's not deep enough. I want to that can be applied. And also, like, removing bias. You could do a little bit about it, but again, it's down to the world leaders and top executives, and I don't really have much of a say in it. So, but it's going to spread the word.
But right now, Joseph, your voice and what you're doing right now is creating. It's creating a difference right now. And something that you said was so profound in that how you practice mindfulness is that you see yourself kind of almost from like a 3D bird's eye view, right? Mm-hmm. That you're like looking at yourself from an outside perspective, kind of watching yourself. And maybe that is one of the key components to removing this bias, is that this tunnel vision that people have to see things one way only, and to fight for that only. They're maybe not as mindful to look outside of themselves and see the bigger picture. That is something I learned from you today. And I know that anytime that anyone feels like their voice isn't making a difference, it's traveling, and this energy is traveling out there, and it's creating a ripple just like the bees.
No, you're 100% right. And you know what? The key is, you just said that, Charles, was the fact that people have to speak up. Speak up. Don't stay quiet. It's all our planet. People are in the positions of politicians. We're paying their salary. We have the right to speak. We have the right to choose. We have the right to decide what we want for our children, for everything. So I think, to speak up is the right way forward. And hopefully people who are listening spread this word, spread what we're doing, listening to the younger children, because we're leaving the planet for you guys. And it's not a good way to leave it for you guys, but I do feel there's an awakening taking place. But at the moment, like you said, it's a bit pivotal. People, everyone needs to really come together and make that change in the world. But thank you so much, Joseph. Is there anything that you would like to leave our viewers with before we leave? Is there anything at all, any message, wisdom, knowledge, anything?
So for the viewers, I'd say, since you stayed to the end, since this is the end of the video, thank you. It makes a difference. Listening to people, not many people have the patience. They have the option to watch a Mr. Beast video, or, some sort of crazy, mentally stimulating, ADHD riddled video. But this is something that will make more of a difference, in my opinion. And it could help make a change in the world. And I appreciate your patience and your time, because you could be doing anything else, but you're listening to us. So thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Josie. That's so powerful. And again, from us, from myself and from Charles, thank you again for listening, for sharing these videos. Please don't just keep it to yourself. Please share it with as many people as possible, so it goes around the world. And if anyone would like to come on A Voice for Children, please contact us. So we're at angelsoflightonline.com. Just look up our website. You can see all of our programs, everything, but you can email us there. So please get in contact with us. Anyone that would like to come on the show, we'd love to hear from you. So thank you all again from myself, Joseph, and Charles. Thanks a lot. Lots of love. Bye.